Hi, and welcome to this webinar on doing business in the UK, which is part of the Migrant Players training programme. This is the last stage of the programme, which has been run across the UK, France, Turkey and Spain. And it's part of a series of 4 webinars about doing business in each of our partnership countries. So it's focused more on those of you who are living outside of the UK who are maybe interested in trading with UK businesses, but could also be useful for migrants who have just arrived in the UK and are interested in setting up a business. So we're going to be looking at today getting a basic understanding of the business culture here in the UK, understanding the rules and procedures for businesses, and also just getting a basic knowledge of how to trade with partners here in the UK. So it is a basic introduction. We'll be sharing the slides on the website and in our online hub, so you'll be able to access the information as well as a few links that are within this presentation at a later date. And you can also get more information on the project and setting up businesses on those websites and on our Facebook page as well. So to start with, just to give a bit of an overview of the UK, I'm sure you're all familiar with the country to some extent. But the UK is comprised of 4 countries: England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, and it's important to be aware of those geographical distinctions, and also the fact that there is a strong sense of identity and nationalism felt by each of the populations of those 4 countries. So Scotland is different to Wales, to England, to Northern Ireland, and they have their own sense of identity, as does the UK, Wales and Northern Ireland. And even within England, so for example I'm from the north, it's a very different sense of identity to that of somebody, say, from Cornwall, which is right at the very south and the tip of the country. So it is important, if you're trading with a local area, to be aware of where that is, and the types of culture and the identity that there is there and how they work. So this presentation, as I said, is an introduction, it's an overview, and it is worth doing more research, of course, once you make that decision to do business here. And so just some key points to note. British people generally, in terms of business at least, are fairly formal. So a traditional handshake is normal when you meet somebody in business, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later in the presentation. The older generation do prefer to work with companies that they know, but the younger generation tends to be a bit more flexible and a little bit more open to trading with new businesses and finding out about new ideas and so on. Networking is highly important for making business connections, and coming here and getting to know the people that you might be working with is really, really considered important. RILAC is also respected. Business people prefer to deal with people at their own level. If at all possible, if you have someone elder on your team, a director with that aura of authority, it can be quite useful if you're looking to come and trade and you're meeting especially a big company for the first time and building up those business relationships, that could be useful. So ways of doing business in the UK. There are sort of several effective ways. First and most traditionally is sales through a local branch. So if you were setting up a very traditional business like a shop, you would have to register your company with Companies House in either England, Wales, Scotland or Northern Ireland, and you need at least 1 director and 1 shareholder. So it could be 1 person appointed to both of those positions, or you can set up a company with many directors and shareholders. Nowadays, probably more frequently businesses are distance selling. So this your distance selling when you are a VAT registered business in one country supplying and delivering goods to a customer in another country. So if you're from outside the EU in another EU country and you're distance selling into the UK. You would have to be VAT registered in order to do that. Those who aren't VAT registered tend to be private individuals or some small businesses. You need to be registered, you have to by law be registered for VAT in the UK if your distance sales exceed £70,000 in a year. So it's worth being aware of that. If you're distance selling into the UK and the Isle of Man, you do have to register for UK VAT. Also, if you're selling excise goods like alcohol and tobacco, you'll have to register for both UK VAT and excise duty, and that's regardless of the amount that you're bringing in, that you're earning. Being paid in the UK, obviously aside from credit cards, there are various payment methods used frequently, debit cards, direct debits, standing orders. Cheques are listed in this presentation, but actually they are much less popular, and some places will not accept cheques, so it is worth checking that out, no pun intended. If that is a payment method that you use, it's not so frequently used now, so do make sure that it's accepted by whoever you're doing business with. More likely these days, people will be using online payment platforms. So if you're selling goods online using platforms like PayPal and WorldPay, they obviously do take a commission on your sales, but they are safe, secure and easy to use, and most of the public are aware of them and are familiar with using them, so it is a good platform to use if you are selling to individuals in the UK. So in terms of payment risks, there is a host of private business insurance companies that can cover you against employer liability, professional indemnity and insurance of property. But you should check if your country of origin, where your business is based, also offers insurance against buyer default, because that wouldn't be covered from within the UK. If you're transferring money to or from the country, in terms of transferring money into or within the EU, you would need to inform customs if the amount is greater than €10,000. So moving on, just to give a bit of an introduction in terms of how government works, and we'll talk about tax and customs considerations as well. So obviously the UK government is led by the Prime Minister, with the support of Cabinet and Ministers. For an entrepreneur interested in doing business here, you would need mostly to be aware of two departments. And so the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, which looks after all business and industrial strategy, science, innovation, energy, all of that kind of umbrella of sectors. And then also, and on a more practical level, HM Revenue and Customs, who are the main governing body that deal with UK tax payments, customs, etc. And they are the people you will most likely deal with. So when you register for tax and when you submit tax returns and so on, that all goes through HM Revenue and Customs. We refer to that as HMRC. So there is a large amount of tax information available, and you can find out everything that you need to know through this website, .gov.uk. So this is a central website where you can access information about all public services across the UK, and a specific section on tax. So check that out if you are looking at starting to trade here. If you are an EU business who is distant selling to the UK, as I said before, you would need to register for that, and you can do that by post. Again, the link and all that information is available through the website above. And from the 1st of April 2015, there's been a single corporation tax rate of 20% for non-ring-fence profits. So you also need to be aware of that and registered for corporation tax. And so with that in mind, just some more tax and customs considerations here. These are the income tax rates for 2019 to 2020. So they do tend to change a little bit each year, so it's worth just checking that out if you come back to this in the future. Customs countries that are part of the EU single market allow free movement of goods and services without the need for customs checks, and there are no duty payments unless you are trading in controlled goods. So be aware of that and check if you're dealing with controlled goods and things like alcohol, cigarettes, firearms, some food and some textiles. You will need to check that out. There may be extra checks or some payments that you need to make, and you would need an import license to import those goods into the UK. So there is some documentation that you would need, and so you should be aware of that, and ensure that your supplier sends a copy of any paperwork that you need with your goods. Obviously, we're going to talk a little bit more about Brexit later on in the presentation. Obviously, that will have an impact on these regulations around customs. We don't know what that will be yet. So it's just, this is correct as we record today, but you will need to double check and keep an eye on the situation in terms of Brexit. And once the UK has left, depending on the deal that is agreed, this will change. So please do check that out in the future, depending on the situation. So more legal considerations to be aware of. And again, this may well change in the next year or two. But currently, all EU countries, including the UK, must comply with EU regulations. So when moving goods between the EU countries, you need to get a commodity code and pay VAT, but not import duty. In terms of employment laws, European nationals do have the right to live in the UK, and though there are certain exceptions, in general it's still entitled to work in the UK, and you don't need yet to obtain a visa or a work permit to do so. Although currently EU nationals are being asked to register that they are working and living here in the UK, and there's some more information on that and what you need to do if that relates to you on the .gov.uk website. If you are non-EU foreign national and you're interested in working here in the UK, you do still require a visa. And Tier 1 visas, so the UK visas are split into 5 tiers, and it works on a points-based system. If you're a highly skilled worker and an entrepreneur, you will need to apply for a Tier 1 visa as a startup or an innovator. And you will need to register as a taxpayer with HMRC if you start a business. So again, all the information on that is on that .gov.uk website that we gave you earlier in the presentation. So licensing, international trade is heavily regulated for some goods. So as I said before, things like firearms, alcohol, tobacco, and some food and textiles are considered controlled goods, so you should be aware of what those are and if you're dealing with them. There's a guide to refer to in terms of the licences that you would need and charges, etc., like excise, customs duty and so on. So the link to that guide is here in this presentation, which, as I said, we will share with everybody on the website and on the Microplayers online hub. In terms of intellectual property, if you have an EU trademark, then that protects intellectual property in the EU member states. IP can be licensed out or licensed in, so you can license out your IP to another company in return for a fee, or you can license in to use another company's IP to develop your own business and products. In terms of technical product requirements, all countries, and so that again still includes the UK at this present time, are still subject to EU regulated standardisation. So the Department for Business Innovation and Skills in the UK is responsible for ensuring businesses conform to that. In terms of packaging and labelling, packaging must conform as well also to EU regulations in relation to health and environment protection. In the UK, you don't have to show any particular information on the label for every kind of product, but whatever you do include has to be accurate. So there are laws against misleading people through your packaging. So things like labels must not be misleading about things like quantity or size, and so it must be as described. The price must be accurate. What it's made of must be accurate, and that's especially important if if your product is food based, and there are specific laws if you are producing food around allergies, and you must provide information on any allergens contained within your product. How, where and when it was made must be accurate. What you say it can do, so if your product is an anti-wrinkle cream and you say it takes off 30 years, well it doesn't, so that will be classed as misleading, and that could get you into trouble. And you also need to be accurate about the people or organisations that endorse it. So saying that the Queen uses your anti-wrinkle product, not that I'm saying she needs it, would be misleading if she doesn't in fact use it, and again you could get into trouble for that, and there are fines related to such issues. So something about the infrastructure for businesses and the support that you can receive as a business in the UK. The UK government has, like many countries since the recession, had a big focus on supporting enterprise, and what we call the LEPs, so the local enterprise partnerships, were set up as a result of that focus. These are partnerships between the public sector, so local authorities, and private businesses. And they cover each of the different regions across England. So there are 39 LEPs in England, and there's a link there where you can find out more, and you can find out about each LEP in each area. They come in different sizes and structures, so it's based on the region and the lead within that region, but they do offer a lot of support and can help with funding and networking and building skills and so on, so it's useful to check them out. The UKTI is a government organisation that works with UK businesses to help them ensure their success in international markets and has a focus on exports. So they are working to encourage overseas companies also to look at trading within the UK. So they have two kind of main targets really. First, to help UK businesses to expand and grow globally and expand and export their markets, but also to help companies from outside the UK to trade to the UK and import here. So the headquarters are in London, but they have staff across more than 100 countries. So if you are looking to import into the UK, it's worth having a look to see where you're living currently has a UKTI office, and getting in touch with them to see what support they might be able to offer. Within the UK, we have a very good network of chambers of commerce, and they're very traditional and very well known, and are quite powerful within the UK business. And there are 52 accredited chambers across the UK, and they represent thousands of businesses of all sizes and sectors. So they are very well established. They are powerful pressure groups, so they do lobby government and defend business priorities. So they've had quite a lot of input into terms of Brexit and what we should be doing to protect UK business. But on a practical level, they also offer to small businesses a range of services, so networking events, funding, workshops, and sort of day-to-day support on running businesses. So if you are setting up within the UK, it's worth having a look at your local chamber and seeing what help they can provide. There is a fee attached to what they provide. They aren't funded. They do charge for their services, and businesses can pay an annual membership fee to access what they provide. So it is worth having a look at whether it's worthwhile for your business. Finally, the last organisation that I want to highlight is Innovate UK. This is providing support for innovative small and medium-sized enterprises within the UK. It's a government initiative, and they provide funding and support for really technical, so tech businesses or very innovative businesses, and they help them to research and build their ideas and bring those really innovative products to market. So worth looking into as well if you're in that kind of area of business. And of course the private sector as well, it has a lot of organisations which can provide support in terms of training or networks or HR or anything that you need support within your business. Googling is really just worthwhile looking for places in your area and your region that can help you with whatever you need, and there is a lot of support out there. And again, we try to share information about places you can go to for further support on our Facebook page and on the online hub, so take a look. So moving away from the kind of infrastructure and the legal side of it, we want to just spend a few minutes looking more at the kind of culture and communication style within the UK. And it's really important if you are setting up a business here to just come, get to know who you're working with, what your area is like, and start to build up networks. So even if you are distant selling to the UK, it is really important to know who your customer is. So it's worth just kind of being aware of some of these things. In terms of communication styles, it's quite an interesting mix in Britain, and it's quite generational as well, I would say. But it tends to be a mix of understatement and direct communication. So I would say maybe older people are more traditional sectors, possibly law, banking to a certain extent, tends to use more sort of established protocols, more traditional and more conservative. And newer sectors like the arts and culture will be more relaxed. So be aware of who you're working with, and when you come and meet somebody, kind of take their lead from them really. But in general, Brits are quite understated, and we tend not to use very effusive language. So sort of be aware of that when you arrive. The handshake is still more general, and when you meet somebody, especially for the first time, give them a handshake. When you finish a meeting, a handshake as well. We tend not to kiss on the cheek unless you know the person already fairly well, so be aware of that. When you do get to know somebody better, the style will tend to be more informal, although it might still be depending on where you're from, it may be more reserved than you're used to. And we tend to keep sort of business and personal lives separate. So you might not feel like you get much sort of personal connection with that person, but it tends to be more sort of focused on the business that you're doing. So being aware of that is important. So a little bit more about culture in terms of business meetings. Punctuality is important in the UK. Always be on time for a business meeting, especially if it's the first time that you're meeting someone, and first impressions do count. If you know you're going to be late, even just by a few minutes, it's good manners to call in advance and let the person know. In terms of retail with people, it tends to be different depending on different sort of situations. So if you are retail an equal on a more one-to-one basis, the retail will tend to be more informal. But if it's a more senior person, or if you are retail with a board of people, for example, in a group, that might be more formal, and they would generally have a very clear purpose for that meeting, and probably an agenda would be shared in advance. Either way, there's normally a bit of small talk at the start, maybe a coffee, and it will start more informal, and then everyone would sit down and start on the actual business, which then would be more of a focus. And it is expected that meetings do have a very clear focus and purpose, and that there's some conclusion by the end of that meeting. So what's generally good practice is to send, after you've met, a letter, an email, or share some notes summarising what was decided and the next steps to be taken. If you're making a presentation as part of the meeting, similar to what we said about packaging, avoid making exaggerated claims, don't be misleading, and be direct about what you want, what you're offering. Make eye contact with your audience is very important, and just keep a few feet of personal space. But in general, we are very friendly, so you don't have to be too formal or too worried, but kind of politeness goes a long way. In terms of dress code, it tends to be fairly conservative, although again that might vary dependent on the sector that you're in. But generally we would say men wear dark conservative business suit, and women either the same or a conservative dress with a jacket. When you first meet, people, as I said earlier, tend to shake hands on arrival, and again at the end of the meeting. A kiss on the cheek is only really appropriate if you know the person already, and if you know them, if you've met them a couple of times before, you know them well. And maintain eye contact during the greeting. In terms of titles, it's really fairly relaxed. Very few people use their professional or academic titles on a day-to-day basis. Within a sort of formal setting, or in a letter, for example, people may use the title Mr, Mrs or Miss and their surname, but usually when you meet somebody face to face, they'll just give their first name. It's very unusual now for somebody to expect to be called Mr or Mrs so-and-so. The only time that might be different is if you meet somebody very high ranking. So if you're very lucky and you come to the UK and you meet a sir, for example, or a lady, then in that case you tend to use their title, so Sir so-and-so, followed by their sir and then their first and last name would be used, unless they invite you otherwise, then you would always use that title. So, to finish, what about Brexit? Well, what about Brexit? Nothing's certain still, and we have no definite conclusion to the debates. Until the UK has actually left the EU, we still have to comply with EU law. So everything that we've talked about in terms of EU trade and so on, standards, still is applicable. Negotiations regarding trade agreements continue to be underway. There are several possible models, but we aren't clear yet what that might look like. If the UK leaves without an agreement, then we will fall back on the rules of the World Trade Organization. And in that case, there would be a tariff on all goods imported from the UK to the EU or into the UK from the EU. So that is worth being aware of. But today, at the time of recording, everything still applies and we are still part of the EU, and everything is the same as we've stated. So just be aware of what's happening, follow the news, and once we have a conclusion and once the UK leaves the EU, there will be more information released about what that means on a practical basis and what you need to do if you're trading here. So this last slide is just some references. My name is Carolyn Usher. I've been presenting today's session on behalf of the University of Sheffield, who are the lead partner for Migrantpreneurs. These slides were produced by our other UK partner, Innova Consultancy Limited. So you can contact either the university or Innova on these emails. So it's myself, Carolyn Usher, and our colleague at Innova, Nicole. You can also find out more information on the project through our Facebook page and our website. But just to go back to that last slide, you can get a lot of information from the .gov.uk website, which I talked about earlier. So there's a lot of information there on tax laws, UK legislation, etc., which is where we got the information for these slides. And the information regarding Brexit is from eversheds.com. They have a Brexit page on their site, which they're updating regularly with the latest news. So if you do want to keep up on that, it's worth having a look at their website and just seeing what's still around and what's happening and what the latest news is. So I'll just show those contact details again. Please do follow the project and keep up with us. Get in touch if you would like any more information. These slides and the recording of today will be made available on our platform. So if you follow migrantpreneurs.fr and click through to the e-learning platform, you'll be able to access all of the information there. So that's all for today. Thank you for listening, and we will hope to see you again soon. Thank you.